Two longtime Bucks hosts walk into a room. You hear the conversation next on Locked On Bucks.
You are Locked On Bucks, your daily Milwaukee Bucks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into Locked On Bucks. I'm Justin Garcia. You can find me on the Bucks Radio Network. Today's episode of the show is brought to you by our friends at Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. Pleased to be joined today by, as I mentioned, longtime Bucks post-game host, longtime sports radio host here in the market, Steve Sparky Fifer. You can find him on 1250 The Fan, and I mentioned all of his work that he's done through the years covering this Bucks team. So I figured we should start there. And the interesting thing, too, to peel the curtain back, Sparky, about radio is I think everybody kind of perceives like rivalries and dislike amongst a lot of stations and groups. And there certainly is some of that. But it's, largely people that just cross paths. And I think Doug Russell put it, too. It's 100 people going for the same 99 jobs. So you get to know basically everyone here. Yeah, you might be the one person I've never crossed paths with in all of our time of doing this.
Yeah, no, we haven't crossed paths to this point. Yeah, and Doug's right. I mean, Doug's worked at all the stations in town, right? Doug's been at all of them. He's been at ESPN, TMJ here. Now Doug's over obviously at the game. And that's kind of how it works with sports talk radio, where you kind of filter around. Obviously, we had our craziness that happened here in August of 22, where our staff was let go. I, for some reason, was kept, and now I help run stations in Memphis, Denver, and Chicago, plus this station here in Milwaukee. So I keep busy in that aspect. And now, our GM and new regional boss came aboard at the end of 24, at the end of 23, I should say, with the hope of starting this thing up again in 24. So we started with the Bucks post-game show after Bucks games in March of 24. And then we started my local afternoon show in April. And then we added, Pack-A-Day radio show from 8 to 9, the Mason Crosby show with Mitch Thunder Nellis from 9 to 11. We'll do a post-game show after Packer games again this year with myself and Tommy Wirtz. So looking forward to that. We have the leadoff show before Brewers games. And we're hoping to add another show or two to go along with this during the week as we try and build this thing back up to where it was in the past. We're on 1250, plus we're back on the FM dial. We lost that a couple of years previous to us signing off 105.7. So that's been something as well. But yeah, man, all my gray hair shows you how long I've been here. Since we started the station in January of 2005, I've been in this building.
We were very close to being coworkers or teammates. A few people knew this. I was pretty close with Kyle Delabe, who was producing the morning show for you guys way back when. Yep. When he left, he put me in touch with Tom Parker and hey, I think this guy would be good. So I interviewed, went through the whole process, thought I killed it. And then I lost out on the job to some guy named Chuck
Freeman. Yeah. And I'll give you a little insight on that Chuck Freeman thing. He was a super late entrant into that race.
I know.
Saw me out at, where were we? We're at a bar on Blue Mound, and he came in. He's like, Sparky, what's going on? Blah, blah, blah. Is that thing still open? I was like, yeah, but you better get him something like tomorrow. Yeah. And then he gave it to Tom, and then Tom heard that and was like, all right, this is who I want. So that's what that was. I think you were in good position until Chuck Freeman entered that race at the end.
Cashed in his money in the bank and beat me there. So I guess let's start with the offseason here. A much more eventful offseason than I anticipated. I think you knew there would be a lot of change with losing in the first round 3 years in a row. I think, and we've talked about this in our show, I've talked about it elsewhere too. I think it's hard to not view everything they did and say, look, if Damian Lillard didn't get injured in that series, I don't think he's on the team next year anyway. I think they're already looking to how can we turn this big contract into multiple pieces probably. But when you saw the news that the Bucks signed Myles Turner and saw that trickle through, what was your immediate reaction?
Laughter, lots and lots of laughter. Like everybody else, how the hell are they doing this? It doesn't make any sense. Where are they getting the money from? And I think that was what everybody in Indianapolis was thinking for the Pacers. Everybody was trying to figure out what happened. And then when word comes that he essentially used the stretch provision to stretch out Damian Lillard, then you're just shaking your head. You're like, this dude here, man, he's at a completely different level. And I remember when LeBron was in Cleveland the first time, right? You had Carlos Boozer and Zilgauskas and all those guys. And he leaves because he didn't think that, they could do enough to help him get to that next level. John Horst has done everything. And I understand maybe not everybody thinks John Horst does a great job drafting and so forth. But again, he doesn't have lottery picks, right? He's drafting at the end of first rounds and so forth. It's the LA Rams approach. We don't need first round picks. We're going to win while we can. And you start talking about the Drew Holiday thing. That was wild. The Damian Lillard trade, nobody saw that one coming either. I mean, there was no talk of that. We had our Green and Growing podcast, me and Nathan Marzion, that we were doing. We don't do it anymore once I got the show back on the air here. But we were doing that, and I brought that up to him. I was like, man, what if the Bucks got Lillard? He started laughing. He's like, yeah, it's going to happen. And I didn't really think it was going to happen either. But then they get Lillard, and they swore that GM to not say anything. Otherwise, he was canceling the deal. So he pulled that rabbit out of his hat. Then he gets this Turner deal done behind the Pacers' back. We thought they had Myles Turner back. And then he stretches and releases Damian Lillard. Who the heck stretches and releases Damian freaking Lillard? Like no other GM in the league would even think of doing that, even contemplate it at that point. So, people can say what they want about John Horst, but he has done everything in his power to make Giannis as happy as possible and to give him the pieces to try and win as much as they possibly can with Giannis making stupid money at this point.
Yeah, what was his line too? Like everything humanly possible that they've tried this offseason. Even you mentioned the Drew Holiday. I mean, that's the funny thing is like all of these guys have been guys that a lot of the Bucks fan base have kicked around and said, man, wouldn't it be great to get this person? And logically you would look at it and say, well, yes, but there's no route for them to do that. Drew Holiday would pop up all the time. You're like, oh, what do the Bucks have in terms of a package that New Orleans would want? Then they go out and get him. Same with Dame. Myles Turner would come up for years on this show, on the post-game show that I would do. The people would didn't have strong feelings about Brook Lopez. Well, you got to get Myles Turner. He's a better, younger version of him. And great, there's no way that they can do that. And he's done it year after year after year. Even, the one we didn't mention, you thought they got Bogdanovich too, that John Horst is not the type that's going to sit on his hands. We can, to your point, the draft picks have never been lottery picks. You'd still like to see a little more success rate, but they're going to go down swinging. And that's what you need to do with that type of generational talent.
The other thing is about this is, all this talk about Giannis leaving, Giannis staying, and so forth. And I've pointed this out before on my show. This is not just John Horst. Like, we should all understand. Wesley Edens is involved. Peter Fagan is involved. I mean, this is more of a team effort than probably some other teams, Justin.
Yeah, and I mean, when you look at this roster, I think it certainly fits better, and it's a more modernized approach to the game that the Bucks had kind of been, not just the age component, but everything else in their play style had been trapped in a style of play that I don't know if you can say it's no longer conducive, but it's not what we see the majority of teams playing these days. So they've definitely moved into that realm. Did they get better than they were a season ago?
I don't know. I can't get there to wrap my head around better. And I know Damian Lillard was hurt and so forth, but this is the first time in Giannis's career he doesn't have a two. He doesn't have that.
It's all on him.
He doesn't have Robin, right? I mean, Myles Turner, you can tell me, well, he's going to get more shot attempts. He's going to average more. Okay, but that's still not going to be that guy at the end of the game that can help Giannis out necessarily win a basketball game. So for me, I think that's still a piece that they need to figure out. And I don't know if they'll be able to or not. Probably not. But he's always had Middleton to be that second guy. He had Jabari when Jabari was the one and Giannis was the two. People forget. If Jabari doesn't blow out his knees, Jabari was supposed to be this. He was supposed to be the lead dog for the Bucks for 10 or 15 years. Giannis was going to be a marginal second player maybe if he developed, but there wasn't a lot of eggs in that basket. They were all with Jabari Parker. And then Jabari Parker gets ruined and hurt. Jason Kidd is a godsend for him because he introduces him to Kobe, to KG, and gets this mindset built into him and then says, here, go run the offense and see what happens. Everybody's like, what are you doing? And he goes and runs this offense, and he's the one that said, screw the threes, be a bull in a china shop, go run through everybody and throw the ball down. That everything that you see now was built from the base, which was Jason Kidd. With all due respect to Larry Drew, if that's Larry Drew, I don't know if Giannis develops the same way he develops. I don't know if he ends up in the same position. Now, Larry Drew got screwed. They were cutting that deal behind Larry Drew's back. So that I agree with. But that's a large part of it. But anyways, so Parker, Middleton, Lillard, Holiday was never that too. But you've always had that guy. Now it's going to be more on Giannis. And I said it on my show, if this is going to work, they have to continue to be a top three-point shooting field goal percentage team as far as makes. But they're also probably going to be near the top in attempts too.
Volume,
for the first time in a long time. They're going to have to score that way.
Yeah. Yeah, they're going to have to increase the threes from everybody, and I think there's a good chance they can do that. But the defense is going to be all the more important too, because I think there's some questions too about what the ceiling of this offense can be as good as Giannis is. I want to get into that and the overall Giannis conversation coming up after this. Most people can't name all their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's 401ks, properties, or investments. And when you don't have that full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. That's why there's Monarch Money. It's an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or phone. It's built for people with busy lives. If you put off organizing your finance, Monarch is for you. It does the heavy lifting for you, linking all of your accounts in minutes so you can see clear data visuals, get smart categorization of your spending, and finally feel in control of your money without ever touching a spreadsheet. It's easy to manage shared accounts, plan for future investments or financial goals, and discover forgotten funds like 401ks from past jobs to maximize your financial portfolio. Don't miss out on this financial opportunity. Use the code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. It's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with the code LOCKEDONNBA. So when you look at this team, do they have to be a defensive team? Basically, like we need a really good top 10 defense and our offense is going to show improvement. Is it the opposite? Is it a mixture of the two?
I don't know if I buy into this team has the guys to be a top defensive team, right? I mean, they got better defensively for sure in the second half of last year. They started finally getting to that point. But if you just look at their guards, just start there. Look at the guards. Like, where are those great defensive players going to come from? AJ Green tries hard, right? He gives you max effort and so forth, but he's not going to be an all defensive team guy in the NBA. So where is that going to come from? That's my biggest question on this whole thing is from the guard standpoint. You've got to be able to at least try to get in front of people, right? Lillard tried, but he's not a great defensive player. It is what it is. And my producer, Charlie Usen, brought it up not this last year, but the year before that, when everybody was getting on Giannis's defense and how it suffered. And he said, well, wait a second. Damian Lillard is in front of the guy now instead of Drew Holiday. So he's making everybody's job more difficult behind him because he can't guard his guy to a certain degree. And I didn't really think about it from that perspective, but I guess he's probably right as far as you have a really good defensive guard up front that can, stop the other guy from getting past him every single time and not be a turnstile. That does take pressure off of Lopez or Myles Turner in this instance, or Giannis, who's a great help side defender as well. So my question is, how good can those guards be defensively? That's going to be how good this team probably is defensively going forward.
I mean, and even 2 years ago when your backcourt was Dame and Malik Beasley, then you're constantly under attack. If you Brook Lopez and Giannis can't do quite as much as the helper either. I'm kind of in between with you, and it seems like a majority of Bucks fans are in their strong belief in this defense. I do think they can be a top 10. I don't think they'll be elite defensively. I think the big thing is, as we've witnessed the last couple of years, one of the more important parts is we're rounding back to the spot where depth is important instead of being top heavy, but also just removing any liabilities. That as long as you have guys that are playable, it doesn't matter if they're the best defender at that position, as long as they're not one of the worst where, man, this guy is a liability and we can pick on him. That's where the Bucks really got into trouble. I don't think they'll be there this year. I don't think they'll have, any first team defensive players. Giannis would be the closest. We'll see. It depends on the team defense, but I think they'll be around 10. Whether or not that's good enough, I think kind of comes back to what you brought up in where do the Bucks rank amongst 3-point volume, and just how good individually is Giannis? Because I think you look at the team and you just say, we just mentioned depth being important, but it's a lot of number 3 options where you'd feel really good if this was your third guy. Who is that number 2 guy, and who's, more likely or most likely to make that jump on the team?
Well, I think the guy with the most talent, and he's definitely a wild card because you don't know what you're getting. But Kevin Porter Jr., I think, from a talent perspective, is that guy. Like, offensively.
Who do you think will be the second leading scorer?
Myles Turner. I think Myles Turner probably averages somewhere between 18 to 20 points a night. They have to. And I wouldn't be surprised. I know Myles Turner likes to shoot that 3 and so forth. But at some point, they didn't really do this with Brook Lopez a lot. And I know it's not modern NBA and so forth. But I'm sorry, if you have an advantage at center, somebody that can't handle Myles Turner within 5 feet of the paint, I think you have to start thinking about that option to get easier baskets so he's not shooting 10 threes a night on getting more baskets inside. Let him work in the post and develop that. That was a huge miss as far as I'm concerned from Bud. And Doc used it a little bit, but not using Brook Lopez. I give Bud all the credit in the world for letting him develop that 3-point shot. But he was one of the most consistent offensive bigs in the league around the rim. And on nights when you weren't shooting well, instead of going inside and saying, here, go get us a couple easy baskets, stop the bleeding, Brook, let's get some momentum back here, you just refused. And we just kept shooting threes and missing them because we were cold outside when you had an option to go inside and to stop a run whenever you wanted and just chose not to do it. With Myles Turner, because you don't have that second option, the easier baskets you can get, I think, the better at this point with Myles Turner. Whether that's, pick and roll, whether that's him just calling for it and somebody dropping the ball down to him and doing it that way, that's fine too. Whether he's up on the elbow and he's the distributor from the elbow and you got Porter slashing and doing things that way, I think you've got to figure out more ways to get to the rim and score that basketball than just being solely relying on that 3-point shot. Because I think going into the season, that's going to be what everybody's going to expect of, okay, they're going to sit outside, jack up a bunch of threes, Giannis drive and kick, more of that type of stuff. But how do you get there? And then you start talking about, okay, who can create off the dribble on this team? Who can get their own shot? You say what you want about Chris Middleton. He got his own shot. Lillard can get his own shot. And that's why I say Porter Jr., because his ability to handle the ball to get his own shot is probably the third piece on this team when we start talking about Myles Turner, Giannis, and then who's that next guy? I'm not in love with Gary Trent Jr. I'm amazed they stole him, another feather in the cap of John Horst. I thought he was going to go for significantly more to somebody else. I'm not sold that last year is necessarily duplicated this year. If it is, great. I mean, good for the Bucks if he can play like he did in the second half of the postseason for an entire season. But again, he's not a guy that's going to do that either. So, he's a guy that you got to get the ball to, let him shoot that 3. AJ Green, give him the ball, let him shoot that 3. Hopefully he's more consistent than he was last year shooting that 3-point shot. But I think KPJ has to be maybe that guy, that X factor that before the season, it was like, we'll see. And then at the end of the year, he's averaging 22 or something. You're like, holy crap. Like, that's why they're sitting in the 1 seed right now, or the 2 seed is because Kevin Porter Jr. blew up finally.
I think he's the most important guy to the team because we did a survey and asking fans who they thought would be the second leading scorer, who had the breakout possibilities. It was pretty overwhelming. People choosing Gary Trent Jr. And I like Gary Trent Jr. I don't think he's a bad player. He's certainly an upgrade on both ends as a two-way player than Malik Beasley was. And he was, certainly one of your better players in the playoffs. So there's a lot of positives to come from it. But I think we kind of know what Gary Trent Jr. is and what that ceiling is. Kevin Porter Jr. is the wild card where there's going to be a lot of, holy cow, this guy single-handedly won the game against the Timberwolves type of performances. And there's going to be, I think, a decent amount of, first game of that series against the Pacers where it was, I don't know if he's ready for this. There's going to be a lot of good and bad. So the more that shrinks, and the number you threw out is where I'm at too. Like, for this team to reach the heights we hope they get to, I think he needs to be like 22, 23, 24 points per game.
And unfortunately, it's kind of unfair, to be honest, because the guy that should be the guy we're talking about is Kyle Kuzma. But the problem is nobody trusts Kyle Kuzma. And the even more unfortunate part about it is that guy is so talented. He's so athletic. Like, he's long. He should be able to defend with anybody in this league, be able to move his feet and do it. He's got the athletic ability to get to the rim when he wants. he should be able to shoot the ball a hell of a lot better than he shoots the ball consistently. That's the guy that should be, the number 2 or 3 option on this team coming into the season. The problem is nobody buys into him doing that. Everybody goes back to, well, in the bubble, Sparky with the Lakers. Oh, I don't care about the bubble. Like, the bubble's a joke. So forget the bubble. But outside of that, what has he done? And I hope that he has had some type of communication with this Bucks coaching staff of what they want him to work with. Maybe they got him somebody to work with him on his shooting in the offseason, whatever. Hopefully he's putting in the time and the effort, to get to that next level, to maybe get to an all-star game at some point in his career. You need that motivation. He doesn't have to have Giannis motivation, but give me something. Give me something that says, hey, man, I want to be your 2, Giannis. I'm going to work my tail end off this summer to be your 2. That's what I want to see. That's what I want to hear. Let me see some improvement from him going forward, because that's another guy that nobody has high expectations from, and he could be a huge difference maker because of how athletic he is and how long he is.
So the name Kyle Kuzma obviously leads us to a different topic. I want to touch on that, the Giannis conversation, and then what you've witnessed through the years of how much Bucks fan base has changed and how we consume Bucks basketball. We'll get to that coming up next. We've got an important request. Locked On wants to hear from you. We put together a survey to learn more about our listeners and make your favorite podcast even better. It's your chance to tell us what you like and what you don't like and answer questions about our advertising. Go to lockedonpodcast.com/survey to get started. Everyone who completes the survey will be entered for a chance to win one of 10 $100 Amazon gift cards. Again, that's lockedonpodcast.com/survey. You can also find the link in our show notes. Thanks for helping us out. So when you bring up Kyle Kuzma, it was unavoidable over the summer with people inserting him into every single trade proposal that they had. Camille and I talked about this a couple weeks ago or so about
is she not on here because I'm on here? Is that what the deal is?
She said she's seen you enough around the building. Yeah, pretty much. The whole gap year term, which I think at first people started to buy into, but then the more you look at you can't have anything other than trying to be as competitive as possible as long as there's this, perceived uncertainty surrounding Giannis. But when you look at it more, is this actually a gap year of sorts where we feel like we've modernized our team. We've made some additions and some upgrades. We feel pretty good. The East is down. We can compete. But next year is when we feel really good. We get an extra draft pick we can work into a trade, and we potentially have a pretty big expiring contract that we can move. Could we or should we expect some fireworks at the trade deadline or in the summer for this team?
That would be fun. I wasn't a fan of the gap year. I was a fan of burn it down and just come to Giannis and say, hey, look, man, give me 2 years and it's going to suck, but I want to free up all this money where it's you and that's it. And then let's go get 2 legitimate superstar players to play with you, build a big 3, and then fill in ancillary pieces around that and give you a legitimate chance through free agency or trade or whatever the case may be to get 2 big name players. I did not see the Myles Turner thing coming, obviously, so that changes everything. To your point, I would assume John Horst will be in go-for-it mode at some point. I guess I would be surprised if it was this year. But maybe this year at the trade deadline. I feel more comfortable probably being in the summer where he does that kind of go-for-it move. The other part about it is we start talking about the go-for-it move. The go-for-it move is a guard, right? I mean, that's the piece. That's what you're looking for at this point is a scoring guard that can come in here and be that 2 to Giannis and take that pressure off of Myles Turner at this point.
So in your scenario, if Giannis says, I'm not cool with that, trade me, do you reverse course or you're just, all right, we got to move on and this is the way we got to go?
No, I would pitch it that way. And then if he says, no, I want to continue to, try and be the 6 seed or the 5 seed or whatever. Because, you have to know the situation. Look around and where we're at. Look at where the contracts all lie out here. Look at your contract and everything else. And then let's have a real conversation about really, are we going to win a championship next year? Now, again, adding Myles Turner does not put them in championship contention, in my opinion. Is probably pretty level to maybe even a little less than where they were last year at this point. So they're still not in championship competition. at that point. But again, in my scenario, I'm trying to figure out how to get you a super team and get you in a spot where you can win 4 or 5 in a row before this is done. In your scenario that you're trying to work through, you don't want to have any down years because of your ego or whatever the case may be won't allow it. So now you're not going to get yourself in that position to ever really probably have that big 3 kind of going forward again. That's why when we get to this aspect of, okay, we're going to go try and find that third score at this point, I would think the third score is not going to be an old guy. I would think the third score is going to be somebody in their 20s that you're trying to put in there with Giannis to be that next guy that Giannis can play with Myles Turner, who's not 30 either, right? You're trying to get to that point. You're not going to go get Damian Lillard or somebody in their mid-30s. That's going to make it even trickier as far as who is going to trade you somebody in their 20s that's a star player to come to Milwaukee for the expiring and a couple of ones. Like, I just don't see how it happens, but I didn't see how Myles Turner happened. I didn't see Damian Lillard happening. If anybody can do it, it's John Horst at this point.
Yeah.
Realistically, what I would like to see is Giannis texting Anthony Edwards every day, asking him to ask for a trade to Milwaukee. Like every day, dude, Minnesota sucks. Man, Milwaukee's so much better. Come here. You already played in the snow. We'll dominate the league. You, me, and Myles Turner. Let's go. Like that, to me, that's how it's going to happen. You're going to have some young guy that grows this down and just says, I want to play in Milwaukee. I'm only going to Milwaukee. That's how it's going to be. And hope that the Portland GM isn't your GM in that city who says, screw you, I'm trading you to Milwaukee. I think that's the only way it's going to happen is some young star player demands to go play with Giannis.
Yeah, and like the tricky part is their 2031 first round pick, I truly believe is the most valuable asset that is out there because teams are looking at it and either they think Giannis will be gone, which is an entirely separate conversation, or just the sheer fact of the matter is, 5-6 years from now, Giannis is going to be in his mid-30s.
Yep.
I think it's safe to assume at that point he's out of his peak. He's not the same player he is now. And you would look at it and say, well, if he's not as good, how good is that team actually going to be? This could be a really good pick. But you don't just trade it for anyone. And I think that was the frustration this summer where Bucks fans would attach that. And like, I'm not trading a 2031 heavily protected, lightly protected, unprotected first-round pick for a role player or a guy that, oh, yeah, he can start, but he's, like a Cam Johnson type.
Right.
Not good enough for me to give up that type of pick. But to your point, teams are looking at this saying, well, if this is how we have to build teams, why would we give you this and then increase the chances of Giannis staying there and that pick, losing some of its value?
That's exactly correct. If they get a star player, he's signing the next extension for $70-some million a year or whatever the hell it is, and he ain't going anywhere. And then that 31 pick doesn't become valuable at all. All of John Horst needs to do is find somebody willing to play ball with him. Now, if the whole league says, screw you, we're not helping you anymore, you're on your own to figure it out through the draft or whatever, and nobody wants to play ball with John Horst anymore, then the Bucks are going to have some problems unless KPJ, develops into some type of a potential star player here that can play with Giannis. It appeared Giannis and Kevin Porter Jr. got along. It appeared they had fun playing together. I'm not expecting them to be best friends, but if Giannis can appreciate his swag that Porter Jr. plays with and what comes playing with him, he's not everybody's cup of tea. But if Giannis gets down with it and thinks it's fun, then that's all that matters, and hopefully it works.
How do you take the Giannis discourse that's constant and always out there? Do you pay no mind to it? Do you poke holes in it? Do you actually fret over, there's a legit chance he could leave?
Yeah, last night I saw an article on ESPN, and they were talking about, teams are going to bust through, teams that are going to fall because of turmoil, and they have the NBA insiders, quote unquote, with their pick and point system or whatever. And of course, the team that is destined to fall and have inner turmoil and all that is the Milwaukee Bucks, number one. The Lakers were number two on that list. I don't think this is ever going to stop. I don't. Because I'm telling you right now, the NBA, ESPN, all of these want Giannis in New York or in a bigger market to really push, that team, New York, over the top, or LA and the Lakers with one of their traditional ones. And it's not that Giannis isn't an international superstar, because he certainly is an international superstar. And in today's era of social media and everything else, you do not have to play in a big market to get all everything you want in life, whether it be sponsorships, whatever. You can get everything playing in any city. Oklahoma City, you can get that wherever you are. But the thing that is irritating to me is just how blatant it is from ESPN's perspective of how much they run with this over and over again. And I am become friends with Bill Ryder over the course of time, the Infinity Sports Network, this NBA insider for CBS Sports. And him and I have gotten to know each other. He is the most anti-Doc Rivers person you'll ever meet in your life, which is fine. But the Sharania story, he told a story on the air, a couple stories on the air about just dealing with Sharania, just out in public and so forth, and the way he was handled and how the whole thing played out. And Sharania is like, kind of feels like he's up here and everybody else is down here, and that whole thing. So that kind of turns me off. But the whole idea of somebody continuing to tell him that Giannis hadn't made up his mind yet and all of this, and Sharania was getting killed for it. And I went on the radio. I said, guys, listen, he makes too much money to make crap up. Like I'm sorry. You can say whatever you want about these NBA insiders. I know several of them. They have to have their sources. They build these Rolodexes, right? They could be scouts. They could be GMs. They could be friends, family members, whatever. They get to know everybody surrounding guys, right? So whoever this was that was feeding Sharania, I have no idea who it was. I have a guess. My guess would be Giannis's agents. But whoever it was feeding Sharania continued to tell him that, nope, Giannis hasn't made up his mind. Nope, Giannis hasn't made up his mind. And whoever was telling him, the sources, I'm guessing, were guys or girls that led him down paths of being correct in previous times. And he was rolling with his sources that have been correct previous times when talking about Giannis, and he wouldn't get off of that. The other thing that irritated me and made me mad was Giannis never officially ended this at any point. Giannis in June could have came out and said, listen, on what all this talk is about, I'm not leaving the Bucks. I don't want to leave the Bucks. I'm here for next year. My contract is up. When my contract is up and my contract is done, then maybe, I'll have some thoughts about if I want to stay here or go here. But right now I'm under contract. I'm coming back in the fall. I trust John Horst. They want us a championship here. Let's see what John has up his sleeve and let's go. He at any point could have said that, and he didn't. Instead, it's, I miss, who else is missing Woj and all this other random crap in response to this stuff. But he never would actually say anything. Then he gets on that, who is that guy I never heard of? The
ISO Speed?
Whatever that guy is. Yeah, right. Charlie using Tommy Works for teaching who that guy's. Never heard of him in my life. But even in that situation, he's like, yeah, I'll probably come back. Like there was another moment where you could have said, yeah, dude, I'm back. I'm going to be on the Bucks. Let's go. I'm ready.
Oh, and the other event too, at the autograph signing or whatever too, where he just like, yeah.
So, for me, part of that was on him never ending it. He could have ended it with Sharania whenever he wanted. He could have called up ESPN and said, I want a one-on-one with Samson on SportsCenter tonight at 5:30 Central. They'd be like, okay.
Yeah.
And put it on the phone, and he could have just went on TV and said, for the last time, I'm not leaving. Quit talking about me. This is the end of it. I'm staying in Milwaukee. That story ends. He never did it. So that's why, to me, I'm not willing to go over and drive over Sharania with a bus and say he's a complete idiot like a lot of Bucks fans are, which I get the frustration because Bucks fans have blind faith to Giannis that he's never leaving them. And maybe he won't. But Giannis could have ended it and never did for a reason.
We've said, too, on this show, I don't think Shams is making anything up or fabricating anything, but I think it's more of like, so I work in data where it's find me the numbers that tell this story, that it's that. Like, just find me what feeds into this. Do you have any sources like that? Let's steer it in that direction because that's what keeps it churning. And it is frustrating on everything you brought up on the honest end. I can see both sides of it, why he would do what he's doing, kind of taking a page out of the LeBron playbook of like, well, let's keep pressure on him. Let's continue to get some of these things that I want. I mean, if you just like look for the signal in the noise, the mere fact that, number one, Giannis helped recruit Myles Turner to Milwaukee. So let's start there. I don't think that's going to happen. You know what? That's all you did. I want to trade. But I think the bigger thing, too, that we just lose sight of, and this is, to me, the most frustrating thing in that national discourse, is we're just completely ignoring what the league has become now. And we're still clinging to this star hunting and building super teams, and Giannis should go here. Well, we've seen for 7 years that's no longer the way this league works, and those super teams aren't the ones that find success. The Bucks were a super team the last 2 years with Damian Lillard and Giannis. It didn't work. The Brooklyn Nets didn't work. Way back when, those Lakers teams with Dwight Howard and Steve Nash, that didn't work. And just that, and seeing the way contracts are and how difficult it's going to make things for any team that trades for Giannis to say, okay, we've got another really good player who's making close to that money. We're all of a sudden in the same cap spot the Bucks were in, and Giannis is in that same scenario. The other part too, you bring up the ego. I mean, everybody bringing up San Antonio. Giannis, and I don't mean this as a bad thing, has an ego too. He is not going to Victor Wembanyama's team. He's not going anywhere where it's a 1A, 1B situation like what he witnessed with Damian Lillard. And I think that whole marriage should be a cautionary tale to Giannis too, because it didn't work. Nobody's blaming Giannis for it. It was the new guy, and you had to move on from him. He wasn't good enough. So that's what could wait for you behind door number 2.
The thing that you brought up there, and that Eric Name of The Athletic told me, and I lost my mind on, was this whole idea of putting pressure on the Bucks. And that's why you don't say what I've been asking you to say this entire time. And my response is always the same. Then you don't trust your GM. Then don't tell me you love Johnny Horst and he's your guy and I roll with John and all that and other nonsense. Don't tell me that. You don't trust him. The man has went out there, got you Drew Holiday. He got you Damian Lillard. He's done everything in his power. What do you think happens? You say you're staying with the Bucks this summer in June, and John Horst goes, I'm just going to kick back.
You're good.
Don't got to do anything. No pressure on me. I'm just going to maybe go to Cabo for a couple weeks, relax. We're good. Giannis has it. He'll carry the team. You think that's what's going to happen, Giannis? Because if you think that's what's going to happen, you've lost your damn mind. And that's what irritates me. This isn't okay. I understand Giannis's point. If John Horst takes the job in Detroit, if they would have allowed him to interview, and he's running the Pistons, and he gets some new GM in here that he doesn't know, has never worked with. Last year was the guy's first year. Okay, I understand this nonsense of trying to put pressure on a GM. I get it. This dude helped win you a championship, man. This dude's done everything in his power to try and make you happy more than anybody else. And if that's the reason you're doing this, that's completely disrespectful to the general manager of this basketball team.
Last thing I wanted to touch on with you. So you guys, what year did you start doing the post-game show?
2006.
I mean, that going on 20 years ago feels like a lifetime ago for where the state of Bucks basketball was then to where it is now. I remember trying to talk yourself into those teams. Like, I really think the Jamal McGlure and Andrew Bogut experiment is going to work here, guys.
Jamal McGlure, that trade happened because Larry Harris, Bucks GM, saw on Hoops Hype the rumor that said Jamal McGlure was available when he went on Hoops Hype that morning. He's like, called over to the GM. This true? Yeah, it's true. All right, I'm interested. Let's work out a deal. And the deal got done. That's literally, people think it's all this stuff, but it's really not.
You guys used to have Larry on all the time.
Yes, TJ Ford and Charlie Villanueva. I told him to make that deal on our GM show or whatever the heck it was back then, the Pro Hoops show, whatever we called it. And he eventually ended up making that deal because I was bad with TJ Ford, man. Like, he would come in with like these purple wristbands or whatever that they were going to hand out at the Bradley Center. I was like, Larry, something's missing. He's like, what do you mean? I'm like, it doesn't have the word brick on here anywhere. These are for TJ Ford. Yeah, dude, I was pretty over the top bad back in the day. But that is where we kind of were, right? He drafts Gian Leon. I was like, you're going to get yourself fired. What are you doing? And he's like, it's not about me. I have to draft the guy with the highest upside that has potential to be a star player. Because, again, nobody's coming here. We have to play it this way. And John Leon, remember, didn't want to work out for the Bucks, didn't want to play for the Bucks, nothing of the sort. It was a complete failure. And Larry, obviously gone. That worked out well. He's been in Golden State cashing in championship rings and doing a fine job over there. And then you get to Giannis and John Hammond, same thing. We draft Giannis. And I say the exact same thing to John Hammond. I go, John, I just did this with Larry Harris, John Leon a few years ago. Like, what are we doing? He's like, Sparky, the same thing he told you. Like, I'm not going to get LeBron to sign in Milwaukee. We're not going to get a superstar. So I have got to swing for the fences and hope I get one of these right in order to get a star player to build around. And then the unfortunate part about that is he's not here to see the whole thing come to fruition for whatever the reason that I don't need to get into. But that to me is kind of how we've seen it. And if they don't draft Giannis, we still don't have a championship. We're still not in that position.
They're not here.
You remember when Herb Cole
I don't think they're here.
No. Well, maybe not. I don't know that. But Herb Cole, when he was sitting there in the stands and all those dudes came walking down with the brown paper bags on, do you know where those dudes went after that game? They came by me at a bar on Water Street doing my post-game show, all in there with their bags on their helmet, and drank until bar closed with me. That's where those dudes came after that game. No, those dudes are all grown now. In fact, I just saw one of them the other day. They're all grown. And those guys all came from the Real GM website, those message boards that used to be Bucks fans, and they all grew their own posse and the whole deal. When Bogut started that fan section, or the Bucks did, a majority of those people on that section were from that Real GM message board. Crazy.
Yeah. Just to think about what we witnessed here. And I grew up with basically the Bradley Center era Bucks that I started going to games in the early 90s, just as they were exiting their peak. And so I was used to a lot of bad Bucks basketball.
Chris Ford.
You got to the sense of like, it's never going to happen here, but I like basketball, so I'm going to keep supporting them. And you go to Bucks games to see other stars. Like you go to see Charles Barkley's in town and Michael Jordan. So to think that this team would have that guy and then ultimately win a championship is still the part that when you think back on, it's still tough to wrap your mind around of like, holy cow, if I would have told myself 30 years ago, this is going to happen.
I would have bet my money that the Brewers would have won a World Series before the Bucks won an NBA championship. No question, I would have bet the money on that. I would have bet the money on that even after they had Giannis early on. I still would have bet the Brewers to win at the end of the day. And the fact that you're able to get that, I don't know, lightning in a bottle, whatever you want to call it, with the Durant thing. Giannis hyperextends his knee. Looks like he's toast that night. I remember on the postgame show, oh my God, he blew out his knee. Like, we're not going to have him next year. This is a complete disaster. And then for him to somehow.
Remember the dread where you almost like felt bad knowing like, I still think we're going to beat the Hawks. But man, I don't really want to go to the finals and lose and not have Giannis there. Where you're like, what are we talking about?
Correct. It was insane. No doubt. I mean, and all of that and surviving a 15-win season and doing all of that and having Ted Davis on the big show while that was all going on and me sitting in my office going, it's okay. It's going to be worth it. He's like, you better be right about this. I'm like, we're going to get to where we need to get to. It's okay to have a bad season. It'll be okay. And having those conversations. And we talked about earlier, if Jabari Parker is healthy, could you imagine if he actually would have been the player they thought out of Duke and Giannis develops? They could have had multiple championships.
And you got Chris Middleton as your third guy.
Yes, you could have had multiple championships. But I'm not going to complain. I'm happy we got the one. I'm happy I got to do post-game shows after a championship. I'm happy we got to witness the parade and Bud being drunk on stage and everything that went along with that.
PJ Tucker being drunk throughout the city. Many of us ran into him several times.
Brandon Jennings' star rising from the ashes in Milwaukee. Now this is like his favorite town of all time is Milwaukee, and starting his own, clothing line and all this other stuff around Brandon Jennings. Like, it's nuts, but that's what it is, right? And that was Bucks in 6 off a playoff series with him running his mouth back in the day. And that is the crazy part about all this. The unfortunate part is you can kind of see where this may end here, right? With Giannis at some point. And then the thought of, oh no, like we're going to have to go through all of this all over again. And who knows if we ever get to see this again in our lifetime. And that's why I keep telling people, enjoy it while you have it.
Enjoy it. Don't take it for granted. And for me, it was really the fear the deer year that kind of reaffirmed everything that I was told from like older relatives of like, you missed out on the 80s and how much of a draw this team was, how much interest there was in him. For that team without a superstar, but just a gritty team that should have beat the Hawks in the first round, and seeing the support that they drummed up there was like, okay, there is definitely something here. And then it ultimately exploded with Giannis.
Yeah. John Salmon's being immortal. Yeah. And then paying him stupid money, paying good and stupid money, getting Corey Maggette a fiasco. I mean, there were a lot of bad decisions along the way. But again, all that matters is it eventually ended up with Giannis at the end of the day. And John Hammond will always be tied to Giannis. Now, he's out now. He's just consulting, I think, with Orlando. But that will always be attached to him. And The funny thing about John Hammond is he would not come on. He has not come on since they won that championship. I have begged and pleaded every which way to get John Hammond on. And he just, nope, that's their deal. I'm not doing this.
I don't want to take credit for it. Yep.
I was like, man, I'm like, well, that's fine, but you're still the man. Understand that. I mean, we all know who drafted this dude. And the Chris Middleton deal, they got Chris Middleton because he was the only contract that matched. That wasn't John like, oh, I got to have Middleton. That's not what that was. That was Joe Dumars going, well, damn. He's the only guy that works. I guess I'm getting you Milton, but I don't want to.
It was Brandon Knight for Brandon Jennings, and we got to find something else to make this work financially.
Yeah. Correct. And again, that was, you talk about euchre dust with the Brewers. That was some type of Bucks dust there. Landing Chris Middleton in that deal. Nobody thought twice about it, but after it happened and you look at how big of a piece he played in this thing, it was amazing.
I've taken way too much of your time. We'll definitely have to do this again. So remind people where they can hear you, when they can hear you, and the Bucks coverage you guys have.
Yeah, we're on the Fan, 1250 AM, 105.7 FM, The Fan. You can stream us on Odyssey, on YouTube as well. Just search The Fan Milwaukee, weekday afternoons from 2 to 5. Wisconsin Sports Daily, served up by Wendy's. I like to pride myself on talking Brewers, Bucks, Packers, Badgers. More local, the better. Occasionally we'll get off to a national story, but most of the time.
So you're the guy that talks about everything in this market. So you're the guy that talks about everything in this market, not just one team.
I try to talk about sports and not farm animal sounds. So that's the one thing that we try to focus on, at least on this station, is we just try and talk sports, man. Like, I know when I was when we were away, we didn't have sports talk for a while. I literally didn't listen to anything locally at all. Nothing. I was so just mad at the world that the whole thing went down. I was like, I don't want to hear anything. And I literally just listened to NFL radio, MLB radio, NBA radio, just listened to national people talk, did my podcasts, Curd and Long and Green and Growing that no longer exist, and did those and kind of kept going, knowing that if we ever had a chance to get this back, which the odds of us getting this back were slim to none at that point. I had a better chance of winning the lottery probably. But if we ever got back, I wanted to get back to doing sports talk again, outside of what other people in this town do.
Well, God bless you for that. The last thing I have for you too, you mentioned
I got
the
one
name
thing
before.
For you too before we're out of here. So it
might be related to what I'm going to say to you. Okay. You mentioned the name before. I worked with Tommy Wirtz for a couple of years. He was one of my producers.
Big hunk of love.
I don't know about that. You got to ask him about the bathrobe.
What?
Just ask him what's the story behind the bathrobe and the coffee mug.
I will. I'll ask him today as we record this. So let's see if, depending on when you watch this, what is today's date? August 26th?
6th.
Right. Tuesday, August 26th. So we always have our crosstalk between our show and the leadoff show at around 4:40 or so. And Tommy and I are both on remote today on this Tuesday. And so, yes, I will make a note of it and ask him in that break. He knows we're obviously doing this together because he was talking about it earlier with me before I came on.
I got a few messages from him earlier today. Yeah.
It's pretty funny. When I interviewed him and stuff, because like you said, you and I didn't know each other. And I had reached out to Scott Warris, who obviously you're well aware of.
He's a good friend of mine. Yeah.
Right. Scott Warris worked with me at WISN. So I've known Scott for a long time. I loved his evening show on TMJ. I thought it was a huge mistake when that whole thing ended. But either way, so I reached out to Scott. I was like, all right, what do you know about this guy? And he's like, dude, he's got it. He's like, I can't tell you what it is. He's like, he's just got it. Like, he's going to be really, really good. You just got to trust me and just roll with him. And he's a rock, man. Like him and Charlie using this station would not be what we are without those two guys producing our shows. I could not be happier to have both of them. Very excited for both of them.
You're still in the honeymoon period though with Tommy. So give it some time and then you'll start to see why the rest of us were like, yeah, you can have them.
Tommy words. We did post-game shows after Packer games last year. We're going to do it again this year. And I think it was like the first or second show. And he's like, I think Jaden Reed may be the best receiver in Packers history before this whole thing is done, Sparky. At that point, I said, you're now officially Crazy Takes Tommy going forward. That's what we're going to call you. And then earlier today on the air, Peter Bukowski of the Locked On Packers podcast said that, he's hearing rumors that they may trade Jaden Reed, and don't be surprised if that were to happen. And Tommy goes, if that happens, that will possibly be the worst take of all time if they trade Jaden Reed this quickly. I said, yeah, I think you might be right, Tommy. I think you might be right.
The bathrobe and coffee mug. You'll have to ask him his his story behind that one. And Scott knows about that as well. We'll definitely have to do this again during the season when we have actual games to talk about. Long overdue for how long we've both been in the markets and never have crossed paths here, but it was great catching up with you, Sparky.
Absolutely. Take care, man. Appreciate it.
All right. That is Steve Sparky Fifer joining us. Again, you can find him and his Bucks coverage on WSSP. That'll do it for today's show. Back once again tomorrow on Locked On Bucks.